What makes a good monster movie? Definitely not a giant bird. So recently I watched three monster movies or like creature features. And I started to think what makes for an interesting monster movie, right? So like beyond going into the depths of, what the monster symbolizes or stuff like that, because the films I watched were from like the late 50s and one is from the late 60s. So the late 50s was essentially, I think, most of the creature features and monster movies that were coming out were very much influenced by like the atomic bomb. So especially like in Japan, of course, you have Godzilla and all of that stuff. But even in Hollywood, you had a lot of these monsters and creatures that were, like, oh, this has gotten mutated by radiation. So some of them were very obviously sort of mutated by radiation, and some of them, they didn't sort of mention it, but you kind of get the idea that, yeah, I mean, that is what is there in the back of their minds. But beyond that, like just looking at it at a basic like entertainment level, what makes for an interesting or an entertaining creature feature? So just keeping these three films in mind, like not like the entirety of the genre, because it's a pretty big genre. So the first thing would definitely be the creature, right? Because it's a creature feature, it's a monster movie. So you need to have an interesting design for the monster. So even ahead of the plot and everything, I think you should have an interesting enough monster or a creature that people want to see. So that being like the most important thing. And then of course, if you have a creature, then how well is it animated? And then animation being like a much broader term in this sense, because these are films from the 50s. So sometimes you have like 2D animation stuff, like if you watch something like Forbidden Planet, and in that the creature is very much just 2D animation. And then otherwise you could have like stop motion stuff, like what Ray Harryhausen was doing. So you have stop motion or claymation, or you could have a puppet, or it's just like a very basic thing would be like an actor in a costume. So you have that, and then so how well is that animated, and then how well is it mixed into the live action, right? So if you naturally, if you have a person in a costume, it's very easy, but for everything else, it gets a lot more complicated. Even though now you could say it's relatively easier, even though like because the scale has gotten bigger, it's a lot more work. But with CGI, things do become marginally easier. I work in this field, so I kind of know like it's not that easy. It's still a lot of work. You have to shoot live action, and then you have like various tools to sort of match move, and you have like a whole bunch of other things to do. But yeah, back in the day when you were doing everything optically, it is definitely way more complex. It's a different skill set altogether. So yeah, so that's like the most important thing, like how good is your creature, and is it interesting, and does it look cool? The second thing being the plot. Naturally, you have a movie, so you need to have a decent enough plot that supports the creature, but also gives enough stuff for the humans to do. Because with most monster movies, the monster is not going to show up till like the midway point. So you're going to spend a lot of time with the humans. So you need to be sort of invested in what the humans are doing, right? So you need to have a plot that supports all of that. And then also you need to have actors who are taking it seriously, right? So I think one of the things that has happened in recent years is, especially like with like Marvel movies, but in general you have like postmodernist takes on stuff, and you kind of make everything a little silly, or everyone is doing like a one liner, and sometimes it takes like the pressure away from the movie, or like it makes the film feel less intense than it should be. Like especially like one of the dialogues that I remember is when in like Spider-Man No Way Home, and you get like when Doc Ock introduces himself, and he goes like, "My name is Otto Octavius," and they all sort of start laughing like, "Oh, that's such a silly name," and I'm like, "Don't do that," like that's one of your villains. Of course, the fun doesn't last for long, because the Green Goblin shows up and beats the shit out of Spider-Man and kills Aunt May. So yeah, I mean, I like the joke didn't last for too long, but yeah, stuff like that. I think it sort of starts with something like Joss Whedon doing Lake Placid, and that was fun.
They actually pay you for this, to tag beaver.
Imagine.
Was that like sarcastic? Because I know what you fish and game guys think of county sheriffs. And then you like to give these one-word sarcastic answers.
Gee.
Like Lake Placid is a really fun movie. But then over time, I think that just got, a little too much. So yeah, but so the point being like you need to have actors who are taking, the stuff seriously because that's what is going to make it work. Okay, point three, and this is sort of I realized when I was watching one of the films, is that if you don't have an interesting enough creature, and if you can give your actors a good secondary plot, then it can sort of make the film work even if your creature isn't interesting enough. So and I'll talk about that when I come to one of the movies that I watched. I'll talk about why that is important. So yeah, so I think like these three things were what sort of came into my mind when I was watching these three movies. So I'm going to like talk about them. So the three films that I watched were, I'm just going to read them out. So it's The Giant Claw from 1957. You have Attack of the Giant Leeches from 59. And then there is The Valley of Gwangi from 1969. So The Giant Claw is directed by Fred F. Sears. It stars Jeff Morrow and Mara Corday. Attack of the Giant Leeches was directed by Bernard L. Kowalski, starring Yvette Vickers. I'm just going to mention Yvette Vickers because she used to be a Playboy model. And I think one of the reasons they got her into the movie was because, oh, we have a Playboy model. And then finally we have The Valley of Gwangi, which is directed by Jim O'Connelly and stars James Franciscus, Gina Golan, and Lawrence Naismith. And with VFX by Ray Harryhausen. Okay, so starting with The Giant Claw. Okay, because so this is like The Giant Claw, Attack of the Giant Leeches, and The Valley of Gwangi are in chronological order because it's like 57, 59, and 69. And they're also in the order of worst to best. Okay, so The Giant Claw is, yeah, it's something. Right, so it starts off well enough. Like the plot is pretty simple. Like a giant intergalactic bird has come to Earth to lay eggs, and it is protected by an antimatter force field. So they need to figure out how to disable the antimatter force field in order to kill the giant bird. Like that's the movie. Okay, so it starts off, and our hero, he's like a test pilot and an engineer, and he's like flying a test plane, and then he sees something in the sky, like a giant shadow the size of a battleship, right? And then he comes back, and then no one believes him because like, yeah, you just want attention and blah blah blah, all of that.
Well, let's not play games, Major. Did your men find it?
Mr. McAfee, if you were in uniform, I'd have you under arrest and facing general court-martial charges. Unfortunately, you're a civilian, and I can't touch you.
What are you talking
But I
about?
can send a report in on you, and I will.
But then more planes start seeing this, and some planes disappear and people die, and like all of that stuff happens.
Something might be coming up.
Such as what?
Unidentified flying object. Flew right over us.
Uh-oh, not you too.
Save the cracks. I've already called it into international.
The first 20 minutes of the movie is pretty good, because you don't have like the giant bird doesn't show up. So a lot of it is just like they're waiting for the giant bird to show up, and all of those things are happening, and they don't believe him. So the acting is rock solid, like no issues with that. Okay, so the first about 25 minutes, it's not a long movie, it's like an hour 10, I think. Okay, but yeah, so the first 25 minutes, great, like no problems whatsoever. Until the giant bird shows up. And it is the dumbest looking creature that has probably ever been put on screen. Like I'm probably exaggerating, but yeah, it would definitely be in like the top 10 dumbest creatures ever to grace the silver screen. So it looks like a puppet version of something out of Looney Tunes. It's just really stupid. The story behind it is that the director had thought of doing something better and then realized they didn't have the budget to do it. So they ended up hiring like a studio out of Mexico, and they were not a very good studio. So yeah, what you see on screen is apparently the best that they could do. Like it can't move too much. It has like big googly eyes, and got like a giant neck, which kind of that moves, but the wings are very stiff, so it kind of does this most of the time. And the funniest part, like reading about it on Wikipedia, was that Jeff Morrow, like the cast didn't know what the creature was going to look like naturally, right? Like, I mean, it's pre-CGI times. No one knew what the creature was going to look like. So they shot the movie and then it got done. And then, the creature stuff got done. And then Jeff Morrow was back in his hometown and decided to go watch the movie and starts watching it. And then about, halfway through, the giant bird shows up and everyone starts laughing. And then just every time the bird shows up, they start laughing. And so he just sneaks out because like this is going to be so embarrassing if someone recognizes him, and he like runs back home and starts drinking because like I don't want to remember this movie anymore. So not only is the bird stupid, but they only have like one screech sound for the bird, so it just goes into loop, which makes it irritating very quickly. So the good part is the acting is good, so that sort of supports the movie. But there's nothing else in here, and it's a really dumb creature. So unless you're just like in the mood to watch something very silly, yeah, this you can watch. Otherwise, no. Like, I mean, as I said, like it's an hour long, so it's not like you're wasting too much time. But it's just worth watching for honestly like the silliest looking creature. Like, I don't know how it even got approved. Like, at what point did the director look at this and go like, yeah, that's what we should put in the movie? And because there is no like secondary plot, as I'd mentioned, because there's no secondary plot to any of the human characters, there's nothing that you can even latch on to beyond just looking at the silly bird. Which is where the second film does a good job. So you have Attack of the Giant Leeches, which was directed by, I did mention it, but yes, Bernard L. Kowalski, and stars Yvette Vickers.
What do you want now?
So reading about this on Wikipedia was impressive because they shot this movie in 8 days. Right, which is crazy. So the plot of it is pretty simple. Like, there is a small town on the edge of a swamp, and in the swamp there are these giant leeches, which like, so if anybody gets close to the swamp, and they've sort of come to life for some reason, maybe they were like hibernating. So whoever comes close to the edge of the swamp, they kind of grab him and take him, that person, to their underground cave, and then sort of like slowly suck him dry over a period of days. So that's the basic movie. So as I said, like, it got shot in 8 days. And I guess most of the interior is on set, and the exterior was shot in the Los Angeles Botanical Garden. So because I was kind of wondering, like, where is the swamp supposed to be? And they're like, oh yeah, it's the Botanical Gardens. So to do the entire film in 8 days is really impressive. The creatures are terrible, okay, because again, like, the director was like, we're going to hire Ray Harryhausen, and then you go like, oh, we don't have the money to hire Ray Harryhausen, which is sort of like the previous film where or actually no, wait a second, yeah, the previous film they wanted to get Ray Harryhausen and they didn't have the money. This one they were trying to get like an actual artist to do the work. And they were like, their budget was so low, like it wouldn't even pay for for the material cost. So eventually, like, 2 actors decided to get together and came up with a design which looks like 2 giant black trash bags that have been stitched together, and there's like a person inside it. So it looks like this weird misshapen starfish. So it's sort of like a guy doing this. So it's not really, it's kind of terrible. But again, this is a short movie. It's like an hour 14 or something. the movie works for one reason, and which is the entire credit of that goes to the screenplay writer, who was Leo Gordon. The reason the film works is because they build up a secondary plot for the movie, okay, which is in town there is this fat guy who runs a department store, right? And he's married to Yvette Vickers, okay, like Yvette Vickers' character. And so Yvette Vickers is sort of like a gold digger. So the only reason she's married this guy is because he had money. And her thought was that he will eventually move to California or some big city, and she will live a good life. But he likes living in this swamp town because he's grown up over there, and he likes being there because all of his friends are here. So she's increasingly frustrated and sort of very vicious and angry towards him.
Can't you think of anything else to say, stupid?
I gotta get this order over to Miss Chovy. She's one of my better customers. Can't keep her waiting. I love you, Liz, baby.
Get out. Get out, you fat pig!
And she's having an affair with like this young hot dude.
It's Cal, honey.
You want something, Cal?
I sure do, honey.
And so whenever he goes out for work, the guy shows up, right? So the movie, a large part of the movie, about like 50% of the movie, sort of just deals with that rather than dealing with the giant leeches, because the giant leeches are boring. But because of that secondary plot, I was really engaged. I mean, as a monster movie, it's like a 3 out of 10. But as a drama movie, it's like a pretty solid 6.5, 7. So it's mostly like his wife cheating on him, and then he starts to suspect it, and then he chases them, or he sort of like follows them and sees where they're going, and then they end up at the edge of the swamp, and the leeches attack them. But so till that time, because it's just dealing with this sort of extramarital affair, it's a good movie. Because I was like, man, I don't care about the leeches. This is fun enough. So yeah, so sometimes if your movie has a decent enough secondary plot and the actors are doing a good job, why not? Like, the movie works. The creatures are stupid, but yeah, like it's a fun extramarital affair movie, so you can just watch it from that standpoint. But then, sometimes you get a movie which does, all of it correct, which is The Valley of Gwangi. So The Valley of Gwangi is from '69, directed by Jim O'Connelly and VFX by Ray Harryhausen. So this was a movie that was originally going to be done by someone called Willis O'Brien. So Willis O'Brien did the original King Kong from 1939, I believe. So he was like a very old time FX artist, and he was also the mentor of Ray Harryhausen. So this was something that he was working on for a long time, and they wanted to make it, but somehow it fell through and they couldn't make it. And so eventually he passed away, and then Ray Harryhausen approached the producer that he usually used to work with and said, I have the script, my mentor always wanted to make it, so let's make this. And that's how the movie came about. What's interesting, so the movie is more or less King Kong. Like if you replaced King Kong with a T-Rex, you get Valley of Gwangi. Okay, so the plot is actually interesting. Like this does more or less everything right. Like the movie sadly didn't work in the box office because from what I read, the Warner Brothers management sort of changed, and they didn't know, the new management that came in didn't know what to do with the movie. Like the movie was finished, so they just sort of dumped it in the in the theaters, and like no one showed up to watch it because they just didn't market it. But the movie is pretty solid, right? So the basic story revolves around this circus which is in town. Like in some small Mexico town, and they're not doing too well. And the movie starts off with these people who have sort of captured something. Like they don't show it, it's like in a small bag. And there's this old woman like this old gypsy woman who's like, he release it back because it will, curse everything and bring bad luck to the town, and whoever comes in contact with it. They don't listen naturally. And the guy who's caught it is one of the guys who works in the circus. So in the beginning of the movie, our hero shows up in town.
Howdy, ma'am.
Basta, señorita.
Our hero, who is like the ex-boyfriend of the woman who runs the circus, who's the woman who's like the main attraction in the circus. So the main attraction being like, she has a horse and she sort of climbs up on like a high, like a high tower, and then jumps into like a giant swimming pool under it. Okay, so that's a pretty cool scene, because that was sort of done using like a puppet. Because naturally, you're not going to, take a horse up like 20 feet and then, expect it to jump off into a tub. Like, that's not going to happen. So yeah, so they did it with a puppet. It's a pretty cute scene to watch. Anyway, so he's come into town. He's like a wheeler dealer sort, and he knows the circus is not doing too well. So what he wants is, he's gotten a deal for the horse.
Got a deal for you, TJ. Get you off the hook with this broken down, moth-eaten rodeo. Still got a brain in that pretty head of yours, you'll take it.
Thanks.
Buffalo Bill wants to buy Omar, the Wonder Horse. He's offering a good price.
And you get 10%, right?
20.
Like, the horse is important now. So he's like, look, your circus is not doing too well. There's this larger circus. They want the horse. They'll pay good money. She's not interested because he's like run off one time when they were about to get married. So you have like a nice enough like this romance subplot that is going on. And then he sort of ends up running into this paleontologist, who's played by Lawrence Naismith, and he's like looking for fossils and stuff like that.
Now look at the fossil. The impression left in the rock.
That looks like some sort of a footprint.
Precisely. It's an Eohippus.
Io.
Eohippus. The so-called dawn horse.
So then he sort of patches up with the heroine, and she shows him like, oh, we have something new. This is going to bring the circus back to life. And she shows him, she sort of brings him into a room, and there's like this tiny horse, like about like that big.
Meet El Diablo.
That sort of triggers the whole thing, because like, where's this horse coming from? And the paleontologist has sort of talked about that horse. It's like, oh, they were like these very tiny horses, which is like, they went extinct like 50 million years ago. So he brings him to see that. And then they kind of get curious, like, where did the horse come from? So they decide to trace it back to the valley. And the valley is sort of like this enclosed area where there are still dinosaurs. And so the rest of the plot is mostly like, they come up with this wild idea, like, we'll capture one of the dinosaurs and bring it back to the circus. And they decide to capture a T-Rex. Or actually, it's supposed to be an Allosaurus, but I can't tell the difference. And apparently, even the people who were making the movie couldn't tell the difference. So yeah, it looks like a T-Rex. Anyway, so they get the T-Rex and they bring it back, and the T-Rex gets loose. It's King Kong. It's King Kong, except you have a T-Rex. Okay, which kind of makes it a bit dumber, because he's a giant monkey. This thing eats people. There's a big difference. But yeah, like, otherwise the plot is very much King Kong. Now, acting wise, it's great. Story wise, it is great. Even up till the point, like, they don't get to the valley till almost like the midway point. But the movie, even before that, is pretty solid. Like, all the acting is good. The plot is interesting enough that you remain sort of, glued into the plot. And once they get to the valley, so Gwangi, if you're wondering why it's called Valley of Gwangi, so the T-Rex is called Gwangi for some reason. So yeah, so Valley of Gwangi. So once they get to the valley, it's like Ray Harryhausen in like completely showing off all of his skills, right? So you have like a whole bunch of dinosaurs, you have like a pterodactyl, bunch of stuff happens. You have the T-Rex attacking, like you have Gwangi attacking other things and eating them. You get this one major scene, which I'm guessing is like a lot of work, where the cowboy sort of lasso Gwangi, and like try to bring him down. And that is done extremely well. Like the actors interacting with the puppet work, with the claymation work is fantastic, like across the board. Really well done. Like with that lassoing scene, they kind of said like they had a jeep in the middle with like a giant T-Rex head. And so they were sort of like lassoing that, and then they would have to put a plate in front with the animated dinosaur, and then they would have to like match the rope sort of coming. It looks like a lot of work. So yeah, like that stuff, all of it is excellent. It just, the only issue I have is it sort of goes on for too long. Like the whole valley scene where they're fighting Gwangi goes on for too long. The ending also goes on for too long. The ending takes place in a church where like the church gets set on fire. It's done very nicely. Like all of it is done really well. It is, I think if it was like 10 minutes shorter, it would be better. Like the whole fight with Gwangi in the valley sort of just, you're like, yeah, you just, like they run to this side, then Gwangi runs here, then they run to that side, and then Gwangi runs there. And it just sort of goes on and on and on for like a long enough time. Just like, yeah, it could have been shorter. But yeah, beyond that, like it's a fantastic movie. It's definitely, like if you like monster movies, this one should, you should definitely watch this one. The other two, yeah, I mean, if the other two are on YouTube. This one you'll have to look for, like Valley of Gwangi wasn't on YouTube. But yeah, like Attack of the Giant Leeches and The Giant Claw are both on YouTube. So yeah, you got an hour to spare for both movies. Like not for both, but hour to spare for each movie. Yeah, I mean, why not? Like watching the bird in the Giant Claw is an experience, definitely.